Well, here we are. Jovana, how are you?
I'm doing great, Randy. How are you?
I'm doing good. Great to see you.
You as well. Thanks for
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. How was the day? The day was good for you?
Great. Gorgeous day in Sedona. Can't complain.
God.
How are you?
You're gonna start already with me, aren't you? About the nice weather, because we've had really not so good weather here in Houston this week. So yeah, I don't really want to hear about your great weather there, to be honest. So
I have to rub it in now because
I
while I was
know.
living, you
I
were
know.
always rubbing this weather from Texas. So
I get it. I get it. Well, it's great to see you. Welcome to my humble abode here at Backstage Pass Radio. So, I guess your mom was just recently in Sedona, correct? How was the visit with mom?
it was fantastic. It was great to hang out with her, show her around Sedona. We spent a couple of days in Phoenix with my niece. She was actually here for, she does traditional Serbian dancing, so like the traditional folklore. And she was here with her group from Milwaukee. They had about 40 other groups that came from nationwide and Canada, and they all did their performances, which was super cool. So it was a
So,
lot of
was this ironic that she just happened to be doing this in Phoenix, like where you kind of almost moved to? Like, how did the stars align there, right?
Yeah, no, it was super ironic. She actually had that trip planned. I had that trip planned with her. And it was then I ended up moving, just my house sold in Milwaukee and everything kind of aligned that way. So I ended up moving and so she just kind of came to meet me up here, which was awesome. It was great to be able to show him the place that I'm staying at and show him around Sedona. So
Yeah, and they were in town for how long again?
just a few days. They came in
Okay,
day and left Sunday. So
that's
yeah,
cool.
short and sweet.
Well, and I guess most of your family is back in Wisconsin. Is that right?
They are just my mom and dad and my sister, her husband and kids. So the rest of my family is really kind of, either in Serbia or Croatia, or I have some relatives that are in Canada and kind of all over Europe. So yeah, we're
Yeah,
kind of
wow.
spread.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess there was a recent move, right? And I guess this happened if my memory serves me correctly, I think that it was probably less than a month ago. Like you haven't been in Sedona that long, right? Are you settled in? And is my timeline about right about how long you've been there?
Yeah, that's a great memory, Randy. I just moved at the beginning of the month, so it's just been a few weeks. Yeah, so settling in, organized my office finally, and now I get to hang out with you.
Aren't you lucky? You're so lucky, I swear.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, so I guess for the record, like what took you from Wisconsin to Sedona? Did you find Sedona or did Sedona find you? How did that work out?
a little bit of both. I feel
Okay.
like Sedona is one of those places that invites you in. So I traveled to Sedona, yeah, probably the first time about 10, 15 years ago, and I love hiking. I love the outdoors and the first time I came here, I was just like, it's so breathtaking. And I was like, I see myself here someday. And I kept coming back to Sedona. And then about a couple of years ago, I was like, maybe it would be good for me to move there soon. And just kind of the opportunity opened up right now. So I took it.
That's super awesome. I guess that was a big move for you, like just leaving the family behind and finally jumping off the cliff, huh?
Yeah, totally. I mean, for the longest time, I felt so guilty about leaving Wisconsin. My parents like moved me halfway across the world to give me a
Yes.
better life. And then I always felt guilty about leaving them. And here I am, finally did it.
Well, you look, you shouldn't feel guilty for deserting your family. It's okay. uh, you know me, I'm gonna make you feel worse than you really already feel, right? You wouldn't expect anything less from me, I'm sure, right?
What else are you gonna tell me?
I know, I know. Well, I think, we've talked in passing before, but Sedona is postcard beautiful. And you know, I think it was February of last year, we did our sales kickoff in Sedona, and it was, man, it was just a breathtaking place. I mean, there's a lot of beauty there for sure with the red rocks and everything.
There is. The energy is incredible, right? It's something that you absolutely you said well, it's like a postcard. So every day I wake up, I look at the mountains and I'm like, man, I'm so lucky to be here. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, I'm not a big hiker. I wouldn't say, I mean, anything that takes energy, I'm probably not a fan of, but there are definitely a lot of hiking places in Sedona. I did notice that about Sedona. And I have a partner for my podcast that's out of Sedona and an e-bike company. And I did take like a 45-mile ride when I was in Sedona, and I hooked the GoPro up to the bike, and it was just like the coolest thing ever. And then we went out um, and played golf at Seven Canyons Country Club, which was absolutely breathtaking. One of the best golf courses in the Sedona area, but it was just absolutely beautiful. So you're in an
it's
awesome place for sure. There's no
yeah.
doubt.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited to explore more. I think there's a little over 200 trails. And it's funny enough because a few years ago I was like, it's on my bucket list. Someday I'm gonna hike every single trail in Sedona. So
Really? Wow.
yeah. But I'm always impressed with the mountain bikers. Like I see them like just riding off the cliffs, and I'm like, man, you guys are strong and
Yeah.
definitely brave. So
Yeah, I guess there's something to be said for those guys are probably a lot more, well, 30 years ago I was doing dumb things like that too. There's no doubt, right? When you get a little bit older, you choose to keep your feet on the ground a little bit more and not buy stock in uncertain things, right? And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at these days. But I was going to ask you if by preference you were an outdoorsy person, or are you kind of the homebody person, right? And you kind of answered that, but expound upon that a little bit about the outdoors. Like, have you always been the outdoorsy kind?
yeah, absolutely. I always enjoyed being outside, being with animals too. That was like another thing that I always, as a kid, like growing up, I was always like out with the animals. Like, I always used to like adopt like stray dogs in Europe. Like I would, just bring all these dogs and cats home to and feed them and attract them. And all of a sudden we had like three dogs and seven cats and so I always just like, as a kid, I was always just like playing outside all day, like climbing trees and, doing all that stuff. And then, post college, I've really started, kind of getting back into nature a little bit more, doing a lot of camping trips, backpacking, hiking. So, I find nature to calm me. Like we all have such busy lives
Of
and
course.
sure is so calming to me. So it's grounding.
Now, are do you like camping or do you like glamping? There's a difference, right?
Oh, I knew you were gonna go. No, I'm a through and through camper.
It's an
I will.
interview, Yovana. It's an interview. I'm supposed to find out things
Yeah,
about you that I don't know, right? Of
yeah.
course I'm going to ask that
Are you
question.
one of those bougie glampers?
I was not stereotyping you, by the way. It was a legitimate question.
No, I'm an absolute camper. I won't even have an air mattress. I will have just a little mat that I will sleep on. A lot of the backpacking trips, I would literally just bring the blow up mattress, like one of those little ones that you just kind of
Yeah.
blow, not like fully on the ground. But no, I'll get down in the dirt for sure.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I'm impressed. Like, I won't even do that. Like, I'm a glamper. If I'm going camping, like, I want the amenities. Like, I need air conditioning. I need like running water, all of the things. But
See,
that's really not camping at that point in time,
that
right?
doesn't surprise me about you. I figure that, yeah.
Kind of a what do you call it? A Cinderella kind of guy, right? Yeah.
Super. But
Too
that's
funny.
a
Well, growing up, were you of course you were outdoorsy, but were you a sports kid or not so much?
Yeah, I played sports. I played soccer. I played tennis. Growing up, I was in gymnastics as well as a kid. So those were kind of the extent of the sports, mostly individual sports. Apparently, I wasn't a team player. So
Imagine that. Uh, is it safe to say that soccer was considered, was that like a national pastime for you guys, where you grew up? Soccer was a
it's
big sport for you
It's
guys?
funny you asked that, Randy, because in Europe, like soccer for women was not big at all. It was such a like male dominant sport. So I actually didn't play soccer until I came to the United States. And women's soccer in the US is so huge and popular, right? So and I loved soccer, just, watching it with my dad as a kid and always, we have crazy fans in Europe, like soccer games that
Yeah.
are a lot of fun. They get crazy and out of control. But so I started playing in the United States.
That's interesting. I've had a couple of people from Europe on my show, and even that many more from the UK. And I had a guy, the name may not sound familiar to you, but his name is Carmine Appice, and he was the drummer for Rod Stewart and a lot of like famous people. Like he's just been around forever. And I remember Rod Stewart being, you know, probably top three artist of all time for me. Right, was a huge soccer fan. Celtic United, the Celtic team, and uh, I think he might have even played at the pro level before. But I thought that soccer might have been, over in Croatia and areas like that, that soccer was probably fairly big, but I wasn't sure. Right.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's a huge sport. So a lot of Europeans take a lot of pride in their country's soccer team, right? It's a big deal for World Cup, European League. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we didn't qualify this year for World Cup, but that's all right. There's always
Yeah.
a
There's always next year, right?
yeah.
What's funny is I really do go out of my way to try not to offend people on my show because it's never been one of those shows. But and I'll say this kind of tongue in cheek, but I have so many people that I talk to. I'll say, I really don't know much about soccer. I didn't play it growing up. And they're like, dude, it's just like hockey, and you're a hockey guy, right? You're a hockey player and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, soccer is nothing like hockey, okay? Like that is organized kickball to hockey players, right? That is not the same sport, people, okay? You can call it what you want, but it is not hockey.
Yeah.
I digress a little bit, but my point, I thought I'd pick on you since you said you were
Yeah.
a soccer player, right?
Europeans don't even call it soccer. They call it football.
Football, yeah, right, of course, which goes against what we do here as football, two totally different sports, right?
You play for 90 minutes and the score is 0-0.
I
Like,
know.
what does that
I
mean?
know. And then I asked somebody one time something about, like, okay, I'm a hockey guy, right? And when you start a period in hockey, it starts at 20 minutes and it counts down to zero, right? And I said, soccer, the clock is counting from zero up. And I'm like, well, when's the end of the game? And everybody's like, nobody knows. It's like, how does that work? Explain this concept to me. How do you know how hard you're supposed to, like, at the end of a hockey game, you pull the goalie if you're down a goal to give yourself an extra attacker to try to win the game before the clock runs out. If you don't know when the game's end, then what? I don't get it. Like, I just really don't get it. I'll have to like get you to teach me someday, but
Yeah, well, you're lucky. World Cup is coming up, so we're gonna have a chance to watch some games.
I
Yep.
guess so. I guess so. You're gonna have to give me the soccer 101. I think it's gonna, Jovana, I think it's gonna be honestly in one ear and out the other. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if I want to learn about soccer at this stage in my life, but if you want to teach me a few things about the sport, that would be super great. I'll listen for sure. Right.
We'll save that for another time, but
Well, we've covered the recent move to Sedona, which again, by the way, I'm jealous of. But there was another move that happened close to, let's see, 20 26 years ago, right? If my math is correct.
Figure.
So you're born in Croatia. You correct me where I'm wrong, okay? So you're born in Croatia.
Mhm.
And so first of all, where in Croatia were you born?
Yeah. So the town is called Virovitica. It's
Say
about,
again,
I
say that
don't
again.
know, it's a mouthful.
You lost me. You lost me. I'm from Pasadena, Texas, right?
Virovitica is the
Okay.
name of the town. It's a smaller town, about 40,000 people. But it's about an hour away from Zagreb, which is the capital city. So
Okay.
the western portion of Croatia is where
Okay.
it's located. I was born there, lived there till I was 4 years old, and then Civil War broke out. That was a big event, obviously, in my life as a child, and that ultimately caused the move to Serbia, and then lastly to United States. So
Sure. Well, so I know you've been here for roughly 26 years, and this war that broke out, was this what people know is the Homeland War? Is that correct? Or is that the time frame of the Homeland War, like in the 90s?
the 90s, you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
Former Yugoslavia was a combination of a few countries: Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, what's known today as Montenegro, Slovenia. So they were all, part of former Yugoslavia. And then as the former leader passed away and a new leader stepped in, some of the countries wanted to separate. There's kind of three major religious influences in former Yugoslavia, which is a big reason or part of that civil war that broke out. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
What are the big three religions there? You mentioned about the religions, but what are they?
Yeah, great question. So Bosnian and was heavily influenced by Muslim religion. Croatia is Catholic, and Serbia is Serbian Orthodox.
Okay.
Obviously, we were all kind of mixed in within those countries. As you can imagine, a lot of families were mixed families, right? Marriages that
Yep.
were,
Yep.
mixed. It was a tragedy for all parties, right? The sad thing about war is that it's never the people, it's the governments, right? And
Yeah.
it's super unfortunate. Because, as somebody who went through that, moving to United States, it's funny because when I moved to Milwaukee, one of the first friends I met is Bosnian, and she's actually still the closest friend that I have 26 years later, right?
Very
So,
cool.
yeah, but
Well, I guess that war broke out. Was it because Croatia had declared independence from Yugoslavia? Is that kind of where I mean, I know you said there was a changing of the leadership, but was that kind of the gist of it, is that Croatia had declared independence from Yugoslavia?
yeah, each country started claiming their independence, right? Again, Croatia was heavily influenced by Catholic Croatians, right? Serbia was obviously very heavily influenced by Serbian Orthodox, and so each country started declaring independence, and which. A lot of people today will say, well, they probably should have never been part of the same country, right? But yeah, there's lots of different opinions on that, Randy.
Of course, yeah. I didn't realize this, but Nikola Tesla was Croatian. I had no idea, right? The
Well,
pioneer of alternating current
yeah,
electricity, right? I had no idea.
it's interesting, right? He was another Croatian born, but he's Serbian, right?
Okay.
Yeah, his dad was actually a Serbian Orthodox priest.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, he's a brilliant mind. And growing up, obviously we learned a lot about Tesla and
Yeah.
enjoy of Serbia for sure.
Yeah. So there's a really interesting story about the war in Croatia and how it affected your family. And you spoke of it just, about the moves, but high level, I wanted you to kind of share this story because this is an interesting story to me because of course we had a civil war here many, many years ago, none that I've ever been a part of in my life. And it's just so interesting, these different parts of the world and you know, some of the most beautiful places, but there's a lot of times so much political unrest and fighting and stuff going on, right? And luckily we don't have a lot of. I mean, we have our own challenges too here in the States, which you live here now, um, but there's not war in the streets, right? And I wanted you to just kind of share high level the story about your dad and what transpired there with the whole war thing, and walk the listeners of Backstage Pass Radio through that, because
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people that and I people listen to the show all over the world, but the large base here is in the United States, and we don't go through things like that.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. So the town that we lived in was about 80% of the population was Croatian and about 20% of the population was Serbian. So my mom was actually born in that town, grew up in that town. My dad was from a different town, but we lived in Virovitica, as I mentioned. And when the war broke out, my mom, working in Croatia, she used to work in the insurance industry, and so she knew a lot of people in the town, right? It's a smaller town as is, and she was very familiar with everybody. And when the war broke out, my dad was a volunteer for the ambulance, and he used to help transport the wounded or people that needed medical help and things like that. So, as he went to the military base, the Serbian military base, of course, each side had their own military base, right? And as he went there to help support with the wounded, he actually the base actually ended up getting attacked and taken over by the Croatian army. So as part of that, my dad was taken in as a prisoner of war, and he was kept in captivity. My mom had no idea where he was. He was just gone, missing, right? And so she actually started the search for him. And she went to the military bases to look for him. She went to the Croatian military bases to search for him. And she came across some, army guards and captains that she knew, and she was begging for answers to try to find out where he is, where he's located, what happened to him. Is he dead? Is he alive? Right? And it's always interesting I was super young. I was 3 years old when the war broke out, and but there's these memories, these vivid memories that you kind of have from that time. And I remember our mom driving us around, going to different prisons to find my dad, to see my dad, to bring him food and bring other prisoners food. And I remember the sirens would be going off, like nobody is supposed to be outside when the sirens are on, right? But my mom is like driving around with two little kids, trying to go and see dad to ensure that he's okay, that he's being fed, that they're okay, that the rest of the guys are okay as well. Talk about a brave woman. She's one person that always inspired me in my life. Um, but eventually, we found out that my dad was supposed to get executed. As they were kind of moving him from prison to prison. I mean, they used to beat them, and went through a lot of trauma in those prisons. And you know, we eventually figured out that he is on a list to get executed, along with other prisoners. And so that was kind of the time when my mom decided, all right, we can't stay here anymore. There's nothing left for us here, right? So she decided to move us to Serbia, where she had some family, and obviously Serbia was still a safe place for us as Serbs. And so we ended up moving to Belgrade. About 3 months later, we actually found out that my dad was a part of a prisoner exchange program. So, European Red Cross got involved. They figured out that there was a lot of non-army personnel in captivity in some of these prisons. So, they stepped in and made sure that that they can be exchanged and put to safety. And so, luckily my dad was part of that, and we were reunited in Belgrade about 3 months later. So,
That's crazy. So he's held. So why did he get held as a prisoner of war? Was this by your own people? Like,
uh, it was by Croatians, right? So,
okay,
again, in war, there's not very much justice, right?
yeah,
And there's not a lot of rules that are always being followed, unfortunately,
right,
right? So, and that goes on both sides, right? No one side is, better than the other. I always say it takes two to tango, right? So,
yeah, yeah,
um, it, 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 there were a lot of people who stepped in during war, and even though they weren't like formerly, army personnel, they came in to fight for their country.
sure,
So a lot of people who were fighting for the country, right? They weren't necessarily trained army personnel. But my dad was not even, fighting in the war. He was just a volunteer,
right, yeah.
help people, right? So.
Well, you had mentioned that you had, and still do have vivid memories of back in the day, but like for a young girl, you said three, right? Like, what are the memories of being without dad, not knowing anything about his existence, alive, dead, whereabouts, anything? Like how impactful was that to you? It's as such a young girl, because a lot of times I think a lot of people don't. We have good long-term memory, but that's pretty young, right? And I'm just curious what you remember about that and how traumatic was that to you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember grenades going off. I remember bullets. I remember all of that stuff, right? The sounds of the war for sure. I remember vividly. There was one evening, middle of the night, right? The war is going on. You hear the fighting, and the grenades are, kind of shaking up the house, right? And again, I was about 3.5 years old, right? And my mom, I mean, we would regularly go down in the basement, right? Because
Mhm.
if the house collapses, if the granite falls, right? You think about all these things, right?
Yeah,
So we regularly go in the basement in the middle of the night or whatnot. And, I remember this vividly. My mom just kind of stepped out to check out because we used to sleep together. My mom was like, kept us in the same room, right? So we can all be together. And, um, my mom stepped out just to kind of check out what's going outside to see if we should go in the basement or not. And I was ready. I had my clothes on, I had my shoes on. I was like, I put on all the clothes. I was ready. Like, I was ready for anything. I think that's the part that really stuck with me as a child.
yeah,
When you go through an experience like that, you're really ready for anything. Like, that any moment anything can happen. And so you can be within seconds, you can be ready to, to bolt essentially,
yeah.
right?
Wow.
So, and the other thing that I, extremely vividly remember is, I remember when we went to see my dad for the last time, right? We thought he was gonna get executed. And, my mom was the kind of person who, no matter what age we were at, she was always very honest with us. And as much as a 3.5-year-old should not know that this is probably the last time she's ever gonna see her dad, my mom was very like, all right, this is the situation. Like, this is what's happening. Like, she always stayed real with us.
Yeah.
And I do remember the last time we went to see my dad in the prison, and I remember we walk into this room, and there is this fence between us and the prisoners, and then there's like another door, and they walk in all the prisoners, for visitation. And this fence that was this mesh fence that was between us, it was like there was like a half wall and then this like, metal mesh fence. And it's like I couldn't even stick my little finger through it. That's how tight it was. So you can kind of barely see through it, right? And I do remember, my mom was, having a conversation with my dad, and my dad was trying to be joyful, right? And stuff. And I couldn't speak, right? I couldn't let my, because I thought, if I start talking to my dad, I'm gonna start crying, and I can't let my dad see me cry, right? That was like the biggest thing
Yeah.
for me. And so at some point they actually started walking out the prisoners, right? So they walk out the prisoners first after the visitation. And Randy, I don't even know how I did it, but I ran through the crowd and I somehow ended up on the other side where the prisoners were. And I ran over to my dad. And my mom thought, oh shit, this is it. They're going to kill my daughter. Like, this is the end of it. But the guard was kind and he understood. And he gave me a minute to give my dad a hug, and brought me back to my mother. But yeah, I remember all that.
Wow. That's so heavy, like thanks for sharing that. And I'm trying to put the pieces, the timeline together in my brain kind of on the fly, but your mom makes the decision to leave and move you guys to Serbia and then on to Belgrade.
Mhm.
So this is after she finds out where your dad is, or is this before she finds out the whereabouts of your dad?
Yeah, it's after. So she found out where he was located. We would go visit him. Then they would move him to another prison. So they kept bouncing the prisoners around from prison to prison. And a lot of these prisons were, makeshift prisons. They weren't like a
Sure.
traditional prison that you're
Right.
thinking, right? So, but they would move him around to different spots. So we would like go from one spot, then we'd lose him again, right? Then we'd find out again where he's at, then go visit him there. It's not like there was a place where you can just call and somebody will give you the information,
Yeah,
right?
of course. Of
Do
course.
a lot of running around and figuring out and showing up at places really where a woman with two kids had no business being,
Of
right?
course.
So yeah, so we visited him, more than once.
Okay.
Sometimes my mom would go alone, sometimes she would bring us along with her. And then eventually, when she found out that he was on the list to get executed, she made the decision, and obviously my dad supported that and said, "You guys should leave. Like, there is nothing left for you here. Like, don't risk the safety of the kids because of me." Right. So.
So is that the ultimate reason for moving you guys to Serbia and then on to Belgrade, was just to keep you guys safe from everything that was going on at the time?
Yeah, that's correct,
Oh,
Randy. My grandparents lived in Croatia, and they stayed, right? Because it's kind of interesting to think about that time, and when people are going through that stuff is they think it'll pass, and things are going to get back to normal. And if we can just stick with it, or my grandparents were also like, we're old, so whatever happens, happens, right?
yeah. Okay.
But the younger people flood the country, right?
Yeah,
So
wow.
kids. So
So he gets released. You're in Belgrade at the time, right? He gets released. So you guys are reunited in Belgrade. Is that correct? Okay. And because your dad was a prisoner of war, why did this give you guys the opportunity to pick from what was it, a handful of countries that you could move to? Like how did that come about?
yeah, so we were technically considered refugees in Serbia,
Okay.
which is really interesting when you really think about it, right? But so when we moved to Serbia, we were considered refugees because we weren't like I wasn't born in Serbia. I was born in what is known as Croatia today. And so for many years, we were, considered refugee status. We had the ability to work there and live there and all of that stuff, but we were under the refugee status. And um, because we were considered refugees, we basically didn't have a place of citizenship, right? We didn't have a place to live, and where we originated from, we couldn't go back. And because my dad was a prisoner of war, and we had the opportunity to move out of Serbia to a handful of countries that kind of had this program where they would accept, refugees from that war. So we had an option between Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and United States.
So you guys choose the US, right? Do you know where that thought process came from? Why the US and not New Zealand, Australia, or Canada?
Yeah, we didn't choose it all. We left it to chance, Randy. So when my mom filled out the paperwork and we asked her when she came home, we are like, all right, so what'd you pick? And she's like, I didn't pick anything. And we're like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I didn't want to if I pick something, I didn't want to get rejected for that particular country when there's four opportunities, right? So she
Yeah.
wanted to open up the opportunity, and kind of said, hey, I don't know where we're going. I don't know what it's going to be like anyway. So might as well leave it to chance. And, we were given, or the United States was selected for us. And of all the places in the United States, we were placed in Waupaca, Wisconsin. So that was a
Just Waupaca, Wisconsin. Just like where does that come from, right? You know what I mean? Like
exactly. So we were like, where is Waupaca, Wisconsin? We knew Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right?
sure.
But we had no idea where Waupaca was. And turns out it's a really small town in northern Wisconsin of about, couple thousand people. So
That's so to me, I mean, the thought process is just like, where did they throw a dart at the map and say, here's where you're going?
yeah.
Here's where you're gonna be.
You have all these cities, right, that have a lot of influence from different countries, right? And you have a lot of people migrating into those cities, right? But then you have Waupaca, and they literally had no foreigners in Waupaca whatsoever. When we first moved to Waupaca, it was like a big deal to the town of Waupaca. Like it was
Yes.
like in the newspaper, like there's this family moving from Serbia.
So you were a legend before you were even a legend. That's the crazy
Exactly. You
thing.
didn't know I was a celebrity before this, did
I'm
you?
telling you. I'm telling you. Wow. Well, I'm glad that fate and chance worked out because I guess if it had not, then
We
you and
wouldn't
I
be.
may have never been friends, right? So how great is that?
It all worked out.
It did. It did. Well, thanks for sharing that. I know that those types of stories can be, they go down into sometimes a dark place, right? It's not great to, that's not always great to remember, but it's what made you who you are today. And I have to think that being a 3.5, 4 year old kid when all of this is going on, you're forced to grow up and mature very fast for your age, right? Like you were probably 3 going on 8, right? But I think that most kids, especially here in the States, we, like I told you earlier, we've not had to go through traumatic things like that. And 3 year olds are just 3 year olds here, right? So, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure there's some maturity that you gained from that whole experience, right?
There is, and it's so funny when I look back in my childhood. I am actually super grateful for it, right? Because it made me into a stronger person. I believe that it made me a good problem solver. Even moving from a country to country, again, moving to Wapaka, like, I studied English in school, but I wasn't fluent. And so I moved to a place where there's no one who speaks my language. I am the only kid at school that is foreign, and kids are curious, right? And they ask questions. They want to talk to you, and some of them are being sweet, some of them are being jerks, right? But they're
Yeah,
curious, and
sure.
all of that. I remember crying and, I don't want to go to school tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
But I'm super grateful for all of that because, quite honestly, whenever I'm faced with a challenge, I always think, I can overcome anything, right? It's about how we think about situations, right? And I always think about, if my mother could have done all this stuff for us, if she could have done, gone and looked for my
Yes.
dad during wartime, and do it with 2 little kids, I can overcome any problem that
Yeah.
I'm faced with. Nothing phases me.
Yeah. You could suck it up, right?
I can suck it up for
Yeah.
sure.
Do you think that that made you independent in your I was going to say older age, but that's what I mean. You know what I mean, right? Don't make it weird, right? I know you're fixing to make it weird. But as you've matured in life, right? Like has that made you an independent woman? Like you could stand on your own 2 feet, right?
It has, yeah. Again, I keep going, circling back to my mom, right? She's always thought us that, as women, I have a sister, right? And as women, like, we just need to figure things out on our own, right? That we can stand on our 2 feet, problem solve, get good education, do all those things so that we can always take care of ourselves and not
Of
depend
course.
on anybody else, right? And so. Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely say that all of that experience has made me into an independent person that I am today. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think you're certainly Americanized now for sure, right? I'm assuming you still speak the native tongue, right? And are you still speak it as well as you did, or do you ever lose that? Or talk to the listeners a little bit about that. Like I'm thinking not, right? But I don't speak multiple languages, so I
Yeah.
don't know, right?
I was so I have a circle of friends, one I mentioned who's Bosnian, the other one is Costa Rican, and we've been all like super close friends for, ever since middle school and high school, since I moved to Milwaukee. And we always joke around about this, that we don't really speak any one language, right? I have an accent in English, but when I speak Serbian, I kind of have an accent now too, right?
Okay.
If you don't practice it, you start to lose it.
Okay.
And it's also dependent on the age that you were when moved to a different country. So the younger you are, from the native language standpoint, the more likely you are going to start losing it a little bit unless you speak it, consistently. I retained it well, but there's absolutely times when I'm, talking to my mom and I'll mix in, English words with
Sure.
Serbian.
Does she still favor the native tongue versus
She does.
English? Does she? I figured she would. Usually the old school people will, whether you're from Canada or wherever you stay French, you come here and you speak that. And the interesting thing about, the hockey days, there were transplants that came to Houston specifically to play hockey from Montreal and places like this, and French is the native tongue, and they come here and they have families while they're, playing professional hockey. And of course, they put the kids into the school system here. And what are they teaching the kids? They're teaching them English because that's the native tongue. And there was a lot of friction back, in the old country, right? Like, the family wants to disown them because, hey, you're not teaching them French. You need to teach those kids French right here. And, if anything, I would think in the United States, because of the southern border of Mexico, it's probably, well, you could argue the fact that, well, we've got the northern border too, right, where it's mostly a lot of French speaking, but down south it's all Spanish speaking, right? So, there was a lot of friction there with some of the families, to be honest with you. So I just assumed, right, that your mom probably still spoke a lot in the native tongue.
She does. And my dad, as a matter of fact, after 26 years in the United States, he's not fluent in English.
Really
And it's interesting with my nieces now, because when they were born, my sister really wanted them to learn Serbian and speak Serbian. And so she was constantly speaking Serbian to them at home. But as soon as they started school, they just picked up English. And kids don't want to be different. They want to
no,
fit in.
no,
So they almost like rejected Serbian in a way,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so whatever Serbian they spoke as younger children, they actually don't even speak it anymore.
interesting.
So it's always funny when we're, all together, and sometimes I'm translating for my dad on what my nieces are saying to him. So you're absolutely right. There's always that desire to keep the language, right? And it's usually for the grandparents, right, who
Sure,
are not truly fluent.
of course. Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, short of your name being a little off, right, for an Americanized name, like looking at you and speaking to you, I would never know, right, that you come from another country. So because your English is like well adapted, right, like you speak it very well. So
Oh,
that's interesting.
you're being kind. There's an absolute like
Mm,
accent in
yeah,
there.
I mean, but it's so slight. I mean, somebody might say, "Oh, well, maybe she's from Canada or something." You know what I mean? Like,
Sure,
but
blame
but 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 the
Canada, right?
Canadians speak another language too, right? Like, we won't get on that. But I have a lot of Canadian friends for sure. I love my Canadian friends. So anyway, I wanted to switch gears with you, uh, just for a minute. And of course, you and I met through our partnership, right? Our work partnership. Share with the listeners the company that you're with and what your company does and the role in, which you serve for the company, right?
Yeah. So MPI, it's short for making a positive impact. But we're a lead generation company. So we work with other organizations, to help them with outbound sales activity, what a lot of people, know as cold calling, right? And it's something that, every organization needs more sales. Every organization needs more revenue, and outbound sales is something that, often organizations are struggling with, right? Whether it's, getting the right person, to do it, whether it's the consistency of doing it or the outcome of doing it. So I've been doing that for a little over 4 years now. And my role within the organization is, overseeing the entire operations of the organization, the team. But really, where I step in, is working strategically with our clients.
Okay.
And the big portion of what I drive is the outbound strategy, the list development, who to target, why to target them in order to get the best results. So.
So what's the background for you? Like, do you come from this environment? Do you learn it on the fly? Like, talk to me and the listeners a little bit about that, because VP of operate, like I've said on calls with you, and let's just be on. I mean, I don't want your head to get big on this thing, right? So, I mean, you're pretty polished, right? You're a polished gal, and you're incredibly intelligent, right? So, share the thoughts, like what's the background? How did you learn so much about this?
Part curiosity, part I have a weird mixed background, right? My
Okay.
experience has been a mix of working in sales and then also working in operations. And one of the key things that I identified in kind of working in opposite roles is that in most organizations, sales and operations kind of butt heads, right? And sales are always something that, it's kind of the pride and joy of the company, right? And, the salespeople are always awesome. Well, you know this from your experience being in sales, but the operations team is always kind of doing the work, right? And I always kind of observe this and watch this. And as I watched the sales and as I've been part of sales, I always realize that there's really no structure within sales. Salespeople kind of, you always hear things like, oh, they're just a natural salesperson, right?
Sure.
Just got it. And I kind of fell into lead generation. It's not something that I necessarily seeked or that I was super intrigued with. I kind of fell into it. But what intrigued me about it is that I believed that sales is like anything else, that you got to operationalize it. You got to create a structure. You got to create a process. You got to create a system that salespeople can follow. And if you create that type of environment, anybody who is interested in sales and wants to do well, they can do it under their proper structure and guidance.
So kind of a rinse and repeat mentality, right? Once you learn the system, you go do the system because it's proven, right? It's kind of there's a track record of being successful, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, and I think so. I'm trying to think back if my memory serves me correctly. I think MPI started, was it 96? Six is 96?
Yeah, we started in 96, but really we started in coin. We used to sell coins. So if you think back to the 50 state quarter program, we used to sell a ton of those. So we started out selling to local banks, credit unions, community banks, right? And over time, we started working with over 13,000 banks nationwide. So we really grew that business. And then '08 happened. And obviously that took a huge hit on financial industry and the banks, which in turn created a big turn around in our business. So, Drew, who is the founder and owner of MPI, a true entrepreneur, right? He reinvented himself during that time. We had this huge sales team that we were, deploying to, sell for us. And as, we took a downturn, some of the, people that Drew had connections with and knew, they were like, hey, we need some help with sales. And it kind of started as this, well, let's try this fractional model, right? Where I have a sales team, right? We can sell. Let's try this fractional model. And that's really how it all got started. It was really the turn of events for in the business where, that caused the lead generation to spark
Sure,
up.
sure. Interesting story. Well, did you hire into the VP role there, or was this a work your way up kind of thing with MPI?
So, when I left the coffee industry, which we'll talk about that a little bit later, but when I joined MPI, I was very transparent with Drew in a sense that I want to learn the system from the ground up, right? So, I want to learn the interface with clients. I want to learn what client relationship managers are doing, what the SDR managers are doing. So I was brought in as a senior account manager. And I started with, managing clients and working with the SDR team. And, that gave me insight onto what opportunities do we have as a business? What do we need to do from a structure or process standpoint that we can improve upon in order to create that wash, rinse, repeat system, right? So I was in that role for about 8 months and then stepped into the VP of Ops role.
Okay. Well, let's talk about cold calling, right? That's I think for a lot of people that's a dirty word, right? And it's certainly I think since COVID, there's many that would say cold calling is dead. I myself disagree with the mindset wholeheartedly. But your folks do this daily, right? Share your thoughts,
Yeah.
Jovana's thoughts around cold dialing. Like, is it still needed in our trade today? Or do you think, and I already know the answer, and I think everybody listening to this already knows the answer, right? But like, would you agree, like post COVID, people start, I mean, lots of things changed, right? We stopped going to meetings, right? We started doing this Zoom bullshit.
Right.
And I believe I'm still kind of the old school guy that relationships and opportunities come from being in front of people. Like, yes, I believe that Zoom and Teams and all of the things serve a very valuable purpose. It allows us to scale, but um, I'm rambling a bit, but share your thoughts just basically around cold calling and why it's important, right?
Yeah, so I think you're right. First of all, cold calling has a very bad rep. And part of that stemmed from, kind of the mentality of like smile and dial, right? You don't have to think, you just got to pick up the phone and call. Or, offshoring, that became very popular, in recent years. And a lot of people kind of got a bad taste in their mouth from that. Or, just the, power dialers, right? We always talk about, how many thousands of dials can we make this week? And um, it's about quality over quantity,
Okay.
right? But to answer the question around is cold calling needed? I believe that cold calling is needed more than ever today because of all of the things that you mentioned, right? COVID changed us
Yep.
as people. It changed how we interact with each other. Emailing became so heavy, right? We get so many notifications, so many emails, and nobody's really reading that. So all of those methods that, kind of became popular for a while and they were working and, it's easy to send out hundreds of emails without, even doing much. Um, People still want human connection, right?
Yeah.
Um, we oftentimes, have callers engage with prospects where somebody will say, "Hey, thank you for actually calling me today." Which is not what people think will happen when they think of cold call. They think
Sure.
that, whoever answers the phone, they're going to be rude and they're going to hang up on them. And, there is that always happens, right? But there is, it happens so infrequently, right? People actually want that human connection. They want to be sold to.
Of course. Well, and I think there's two different types of sellers, and I have this conversation sometimes internally, right? Um, if you're a newbie in selling, right, versus that of a Randy Halsey who has been in the channel for many, many years and has developed many, many relationships over time, right? Both as back from the engineering days, coming full circle to being in leadership for a while, right? And selling. You develop these relationships. So if you said, Randy, you're going to a new company tomorrow, right? And this is, I'm just hypothetically speaking, right? New company tomorrow, you're not under a non-compete, like you just have full reins. I'm probably not having to do a ton of cold calling, right? Because I know people and I like to think that I'm respected by the people that I know. I've always tried to be a stand-up guy, right? And be an honest guy. And I believe that a lot of those relationships would come back to me, right? Versus a new rep that's a hunter, they don't have that same relationship. So the only way to generate pipeline, right, is to do what? You got to pick up the phone and do something, right? Because your phone is not going to just magically start ringing like the bat phone every day. Like nobody knows who the hell you are and what you have, right? No, I mean,
Right.
let's just be honest, you're not that popular, right? So you have to do something, right? Do you think there's I mean, you think I'm right with what I'm saying, right? Of course.
Are, and it's really interesting because it's almost a different skill set too than when you think of closers, right? Being a closer is, taking that opportunity, across the finish line, and that's a certain skill that one has to have. But cold calling is almost a completely different skill set. And a lot of companies who separate those roles are right to do that, right?
Yeah.
We always talk about this. Anybody can do this, right?
Hmm.
You just have to stay consistent. You have to do it correctly in a sense, right? You got to have the, identifying who are you calling, why are you calling him, and ultimately at the end of the day, the question that I always ask our clients is, why should they meet with you, right? Why should they take that conversation with you?
Of course.
And if we talk about things like, well, we have great customer service, or we have, yeah, so does everybody, right? But why should they meet with you? What value are we going to bring to them by having that conversation, right? And again, creating those scripts or the conversations that, the sales development rep deploys on the phone is also a very particular thing that we do, right? There is a certain level of consistency that you have to have conversationally, and there is a certain level of fluidity that you have to have conversationally, but still within your control, right?
Of
Like,
course.
so, the example I always use, it's kind of like if you ask anybody, like, hey, what do you want for food for dinner tonight, right? They're gonna kind of take you, all over the place. But if you're like, hey, would you like Italian or Mexican? Now you're giving them only two options to choose from. And cold
Sure.
calling works kind of in the same way, right? You got to
Of
set
course.
your conversation.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, early on, I was making a cold call and the person said, well, what's your value? And like, what, why should I be talking to you? And I said, do you have 2 hours? Like I can, like I can
Or
That's
something.
that's
Like,
Randy humor.
or,
I'm just kidding.
yeah, yeah.
Gee, how much time do you have? Where shall I start? Right. uh, well, what do you think makes a good SDR BDR person? And for the listeners out there, like this is a bonus episode for me. Like I'm usually a music guy. We're talking a lot about music, and now we're off on this topic of sales. But as listeners listen to this, they're going to hear things along the way that they're like, you lost me. Like, what is a SDR or a BDR? First of all, tell the listeners what a SDR BDR is and what do you think makes a good SDR BDR for a company?
Yeah, so SDR, commonly known as sales development rep, BDR as a business development rep, used interchangeably. Each company uses it, one or the other. But depending who you ask, my response on what makes a good SDR, BDR is being able to work within structure and consistency while applying the information and listening to the prospect so you can apply that information and still have fluidity in the conversation. So it takes a level of active listening. Again, common misperception. It's not about script reading, right? Script reading is not going to get an appointment. It's the combination of consistency and fluidity.
Yeah, I think I think most, and you agree or disagree, but I think a lot of first time reps, they start with that crutch, if you will, of reading a script, right? But I think where you become more proficient and more effective is when you don't have to lean on the crutch of the script, where it's just like you and I right now are having a very unlabored conversation, right? It's easy to talk to you, right? And it's not like I'm reading, okay, ask Jovana this, like we're just talking as people, right? So would you agree with that? That's really what happens where they become more effective when they can get off of the. Oh, I was going to use another analogy, but I won't do that because I might post this on LinkedIn. So I want to be professional, which I'm not usually on my regular show. So this is a little bit of an adjustment for me, but I usually talk to, rock stars and stuff like that. So we have different conversations. But um, would you agree with that though?
I would, right? And I kind of compare it to it's like a good barista or like a good bartender or a waiter. You have a list of things that you want to cover, but at the same time, you're conversational and engaging,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The biggest mistake that sales development reps can make in their role is when something is working, don't make a change for the sake of making a change, right? Because
Yeah.
again, that level of consistency that you have to have. And sometimes people will be like, well, I just kind of want to change the introduction a little bit. But that's what's working, right? Identifying that introduction and what's working within it is why you got to stick with it, right? That consistency is what
Yes.
helps us figure out what is actually getting people intrigued for the next 30 seconds of the
Sure.
conversation.
Sure. Well, what's the old adage? If it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll share with the listeners that, my son Cameron had been a technical IT person for years, and he came to me and he was asking me, hey, I'm a new dad, and I've got a baby now, and I've got to try to figure out a way to, um, make more money, right? And I said, I love this mindset. Like you're getting to that age where it's dawning on you that, minimum wage is not going to work much longer, right? You're going to have to do something a little above and beyond that. And he said, like, what's the path? What's the path? And I said, well, you know what, Cameron, I really believe like I was cast into my job. I went from an engineer, like a solutions architect, to a sales guy. And I didn't know a damn thing about selling, cold calling. I didn't. I didn't even know, like, I really knew nothing, Jovana. And it was and I struggled, I think, for the first year. And thank goodness, I have to drop a couple of names, but not that they even listen to this podcast, but it was back at a company, Vector ESP. We were a big Citrix house. And, Tom Flink and Dan Tennell, because I was an engineer with them and said, I really want to jump into the sales game with both feet. And they took a chance and man, they floated me for a year. Like I just didn't know what I was doing. And the crazy thing is I didn't have that background of being taught to what makes a successful salesperson. And you have to agree with me that the foundation to a successful sales rep, account executive is what we would call them, is the foundation of being able to pick up the damn phone and make dials right and be impactful on the phone. And I explained to Cameron, I said, if you can do that job, right, the rest is gravy, right? Because you either are afraid to pick up the phone or you're not afraid to pick up the phone. And there's a lot of reps that are petrified to just pick up the phone. So I said, if you can do this, right, that's your first step. Go get your experience there. And the rest should be like a run downhill from
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah, exactly, Randy. And I remember my first sales role. I worked in pre-cut vegetables and fruits, right? The company that I used to work for, we did pre-cuts and um, I was new in the sales role, and it was like, all right, go get more business, right? And I was like, okay, well, who do I call, right? Like, where do I start with? So aside from just picking up the phone, there's also the challenge of who am I calling,
Yeah,
right? And then how am I going to get a hold of them? All right, now that I know that I should be calling Randy, how am I going to get his contact information? So um, there is a combination of things. I call that the market intelligence is, kind of what we segment that as, or, classify that as individuals who focus on that list development. Who should we call? Why should we call them? How are we going to get their contact information? And then generate people alike, so that when you do have a conversation with somebody, that you can, talk to their pain points, you can relate with them better, you can ask questions that are relevant to them, to their role, and the impact of what your product does, how it's going to make on them, right?
sure.
Because not every person within an organization has the same experience with that product or service. So,
Absolutely. Going into sales, I knew enough because I'm not a dumb guy, right? I knew that I was going to have to pick up the phone and call people and that, okay, I've got to write this script or whatever and, read it. And that's what I did. But I didn't know all the formalities. I didn't know what to even put in the script. So I just did logical thinking, right? Like, what, Randy, if somebody called you, what would you want to hear from them, right? It was kind of that. There was no company like the beauty of MPI is that for someone like Cameron, you guys are showing them this is the process and this is a process that the laws of average say work over time. I mean, it's a numbers game at the end of the day, right? But this is how we're successful because it's a rinse and repeat. I didn't have that. It was the wild, wild west for me. Just figure it out as you go. But I'm such a driven person that I didn't need somebody to say, you got to do this, you got to do that. I just kept changing it until I figured out what was working. And then, like hockey players, they're very superstitious. If they're winning a game, if one guy goes out on the ice first and they win that game, then I promise you the next game, that same guy is going to hit the ice first for the next game until they lose. And then something else is going to happen, right? But until then, they don't break the superstition or what's winning games for them, right? So, and I think the same applied for me. Once I found that little trigger that got me a few appointments, like I just rode that wave as long as I could.
yeah. And it's all about that. It's about consistency, right? I keep saying like consistency, right? Once you
Yes,
figure that out, either as an individual sales rep, right, or as an organization, stick with it.
yes,
Something will eventually change, but stick with it. And um, I also encourage, organizations that to try different methods, right? Again, a lot of people think cold calling is dead. It's not.
yeah,
The results in comparison to email or other methods are surprisingly different in a good way.
sure,
So I would always encourage organizations to look at different options, and cold calling being one of them. It's also going to help their sales team as well. Having a sales development rep or a business development rep on the team who's making these cold calls also makes for their internal sales team what you would say is, account executive or sales manager or whatever,
yes,
organizations may have, because it's challenging that team to think about their product and service a little bit differently, right? Because a lot
yes,
of us get, we get inquiries. It's easy to talk about our product or service with somebody who's already looking into us. Now it's just a matter of what am I competing against versus let's talk about and take you through the process of
of
why
course,
you should look at this product or service.
yes. Well, where can the listeners of Backstage Pass Radio find more information about MPI? Um, like social media or a website? Is there anything that you can plug for MPI?
Yeah, absolutely. MPI-impact.com. Check out our website. You can also visit us on LinkedIn at MPI Impact. We occasionally post blogs and things about things that you can do yourself. Again, we want to educate first. And everything that we do, every organization can do internally. It just takes a lot of effort, and time. Some organizations choose to outsource for that reason. It ends up being cheaper. I can test the different strategies a lot faster, versus hiring internally. But ultimately, every organization can do this themselves, and we share
Sure.
a lot of tips and insights on
Yeah.
things that you can do from list development, from messaging, or execution.
Well, you guys have been great to work with. Over the last, I don't know, half a year now. I guess we've been going at it for a little while now. But the interesting thing about my show is that I'm never talking about business. It's always about music and songs and something totally off the beaten path of what we're talking about. But I guess I'll shamelessly or do a shameless plug for the company that I work for, the Broadleaf Group, which I've never done since we're on the business subject, but we're an end-to-end system integrator based in Houston that has been in business for 21 years. So we help, small, medium business and enterprise business with IT needs, right? From the handheld and the desktop all the way into the core of the data center. So cloud security, data center, network design, and a lot of AI stuff going on, which you're aware of, and we're working on things together to generate business in that area. So if you guys are, you know, at a company looking for an integrator to come in and help with the different areas of IT, broadleafgroup.com is the website there. So yeah, thanks for sharing kind of the backstory about MPI, Yovana, and where you guys have strength. It's been great working with you there. But I guess lastly on the MPI subject, quick shout out to Drew, Christine, and Cameron over at MPI. I wouldn't be fair if I didn't mention those because that's my team there, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
so talk to me about, like, we're going to shift gears one more time here. So I guess from a getting to know Jovana more on a personal perspective, like, talk to me about hobbies. Like, tell me about the connection with coffee and with, while you were in Wisconsin. Walk me down that road.
Yeah. So I mentioned a little bit about doing sales in a produce industry. So I started my career in retail, and worked retail sales, management, and then I went into aerospace industry. And it was, I was recruited into it. It was an account management role. I was, 21 years old, collecting experience under my belt, and then one of the managers that I used to work with at LensCrafters recruited me into sales. He's like, "Hey, you were great at sales at LensCrafters. I know this is very different with produce, but come check it out. I think you'll enjoy it." And so I went into produce sales. I spent nearly a couple of years there, and I saw this email from a local coffee company that, they were looking for a business development manager. And I thought, well, I love coffee, right? Why not? Let's give it a shot, right? And I interviewed with the owners. Again, great family business. Started in '96 as well. The name of the coffee company is Fiddleheads Coffee. And I fell in love with it. I was having a blast. At the time when I joined the company, we just started roasting coffee and then we're opening up a bakery. And so I took the coffee wholesale, as a first step. So we expanded into some of the, local grocery stores, local coffee shops, restaurants, etc. And then as we opened the bakery business, I also took that business wholesale as well, and did the same thing with that. And as I was kind of growing all of this, the owners asked me to step in more operationally, and if I had any interest in, taking on more of the operations of the business, in particular with retail cafes that we had. And I was like, heck yes, I will absolutely love to do that. And so then we also started expanding the retail cafe side. So we went from, three locations that we had at the time to, fast forward 11 years later in the coffee industry. We had eight locations, and, I had a lot of fun, going through opening up new stores, designing the stores, organizing, working with the team. It really challenged me in a different way. I went from having 20 baristas to having 100 baristas.
Wow.
Hiring looks very different. You gotta get a different set of, I always say running one coffee shop is different than two, but once you take it to three, four, or five, it starts to get really challenging. And coffee industry, like anything else, like restaurant industry, it's all about the bottom line, right? Tight
Yep.
squeeze, tight margins. You got to sell a lot of coffee in order to stay
Yep.
profitable, to expand. So, how you expand and how you cross train your staff. I did a lot of cross training between locations because we were working with a lot of baristas who have school schedules and
Of course.
obligations, and getting people in one store. So you're doing this little, like, it's like a game of chess, right? It's like you got to move one person here or the other
Yep.
person there or the other person here in order to make the schedules work. So it was a really great, career development for me. I was fortunate enough to work with an owner who, was a CEO in his former life, and in talent industry, and learned a lot from him, and had a really great working relationship with him, and was given this opportunity to kind of spread my wings and see where it can take me. So and then 11 years later, we decided to part ways, as I wanted to kind of continue developing my career and continue growing. And then I thought, let's go into lead generation. Let's see if I can get broken or not.
Exactly. uh,
Still standing, Randy. I'm still
I know
standing.
you are. You're very resilient, right? Well, would you say that you're a huge coffee connoisseur? Like, are you pretty basic with coffee, or do you like all kinds of coffees? Like, talk to me about that a little bit.
I don't know if I can swear on your show, Randy, but
You
did you
can
just,
you can say anything you want to say on my show.
all right, because I'm no basic bitch with coffee, all right?
uh,
No,
so you like all the foo-foo stuff then, right?
I I developed a coffee palate, right?
Yeah.
It's like a wine palate, but if you ask the coffee drinkers, they would say it's a little bit more, complex than wine tasting.
Okay.
But there's about, 100 different ways to describe coffee, and what it tastes like, and the aromas, and, all of that. So the flavor notes that are brought out in coffee is dependent on the altitude that the coffee is grown in, the soil that it's grown in, of course, the weather. And so it's a really neat industry and interesting industry to be a part of, and to learn about. But as part of it, yeah, I developed a coffee palate. I'm a little bit of a snob when it comes to coffee.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I wonder like what the ratio is or what the percentage is, I should say, like of people that drink coffee, right? Like me, I know there are certain coffees that I like, but I don't overthink all of the where was this bean from and all the foo-foo shit that goes along with that, right? It's just like it either tastes good or it doesn't taste good, right? So it's interesting that you say all of the things like, what kind of earth, what was the weather, all of these things change the flavor of the coffee, right? And
Yeah.
and that's things that people like me don't even think of when I drink coffee.
Well, it's always interesting. It's the second traded or second most traded commodity in the world, right? It comes right behind oil. So we certainly produce and consume a lot of coffee. In terms of being that it's a commodity, it also works with the market as well. So it's always, you will see the fluctuation with coffee price based on the market.
Of course.
But the process of growing coffee and separating the cherry right from the bean is unique to different countries and how they do it. As an example, Ethiopian coffees often the cherries are dried on the ground. So as the cherries are basically separating naturally in the sun from the bean, the bean will absorb a lot of that earthy flavors and tones from sitting on earth while they're actually drying those cherry beans. So yeah, it's a really neat process. I always encourage everybody, if you ever get a chance, if you're traveling to a country that is a big coffee producer, go tour one of the coffee plantations. It's really incredible to see that process.
Wow, why do I feel dumb when I talk to you? Like that's like I I never I I mean
Right?
all of that I wouldn't even know any of that stuff. So like and you know what? Like in all fairness, like I'm picking a little bit, but that's one of the main reasons that I ever started my podcast was to learn more about the stories behind the songs. And of course, yeah, it just happened to be music that was the focus. But even these bonus episodes, which I call them, that are kind of off of that beaten path of music, they're also interesting in their own right. You know what I mean? Like even though like I mean, I never would have dreamed that I would be talking to somebody about a coffee bean on my show, right? But it's cool to learn about that, right? Because it's things that I never thought of, and I've never had to think about it. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, next time you drink coffee, you'll be thinking about me.
Of course, yeah. I said
Oh,
this is the Jovana bean here. Like you'll have a coffee named after you, I'm
hey,
sure.
here's a
But
little fun fact for you, Randy. Since most people think, the more robust flavor of the coffee means stronger coffee,
Mhm.
it's actually the opposite. The darker the roast, the less caffeine that coffee has. The lighter the roast, the more caffeinated it
Oh,
is.
no kidding. Wow.
Yeah, but it's kind of like vegetables, right? The more you cook them, the more nutrients you lose out of them. It's the same thing with a bean. The more you cook it, right? The more you roast it, the more nutrients you lose out of it. The more moisture you lose, the caffeine. So lighter roast coffee is stronger coffee.
So if I'm in a hotel and one says dark roast, that's a more mild coffee then?
Yeah, there's
Like
less.
and that's like polar opposite as to the way the brain thinks, right?
Exactly. And there's also like what type of bean is it? Is it, there's kind of beans that are grown at high altitudes and beans that are grown at low altitudes. The low altitude beans actually, think of your Folgers, right? Most commonly like the shitty coffee that everybody knows about, right? That actually has more caffeine than, some of these high-end coffees that you're
Really?
buying 30, $40 a pound. So,
So
yeah.
why would somebody buy the less potent coffee? Like, I mean, what like is it just a preference more
Because
than
it
anything?
should, yeah.
It's like why do some people drink light beer and others don't like
Right.
light beer? They say it's like drinking piss, like it's, why do they do that? So I don't
It's
know
like,
if it's an acquired taste or why does somebody smoke a Marlboro Light versus a regular Marlboro Red? Like I don't know. I guess it's preference more than anything, right?
for sure.
Well, what's your do you have a go-to coffee that
I'm an espresso drinker, so I like espresso, medium roast espresso over dark roast espresso. It holds up better in a drink. If you're doing like a latte, you're gonna get more of those natural flavor notes of espresso in there. Oh, Jet decided to join in the episode.
There you go. So I guess, I mean, I don't want to assume anything, but are you a music lover at all? Or are you like, what's your thoughts around music?
Yeah, I love music. Music relaxes me. As a kid, I used to dance a lot. I did ballroom dancing, so that was a lot of fun. But I love music. I love all kinds of music. Probably not like heavy metal, but put anything on and I'll enjoy it. It brings up different moods for me, right? When I'm working out, you're gonna laugh at me. I want some like hip hop or rap, like something or EDM, right? Something that's gonna get me really my adrenaline rush.
Sure.
Um, Other times I'll listen to some classical or instrumental. Yeah, I love all kinds of music. So.
Do you have a go-to genre? Like, is there one that's just it for you?
I mean, listen, I'm the kid who grew up in 2000s, right? So pop and hip hop was,
Yeah.
rap was huge. So I definitely grew up with it, being young, going to the clubs and all that. So I definitely still enjoy that a lot. I'll be one of those who'll, put the top 40 and listen to it, whatever it is. But not necessarily, right? I enjoy a little bit of everything.
You know, I we joked about it a little bit a while back. You know, I got invited to that red carpet thing in Vegas with a past guest, and she had like, I don't know, five number one hits on Billboard for EDM. Like, and I'm like, I'm so dumb to that genre. Like, I don't know. I just don't listen to it. I don't know anything about it. So when you said that, it made me
This is why I
it
can't believe that we didn't go, like that you just turned that down and at
I
least
I
let me.
should have I should have said, "Hey Kendra, I've got a friend that's going to come walk the red carpet in my place, right?" And then you could have gone and, talk the talk and walk the walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe the next invite we'll figure something out, right?
Yeah.
Um so yeah, you mentioned the ballroom dancing thing. Like this one kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Like I've never I don't know. They always say don't judge a book by its cover, and that's not a bad thing, Yovana. Like it's not a bad thought, but like I would have never, if you would have said, Randy, would you associate Yovana with ballroom dancing? I would have said, hell no. Like that's like the last thing that she would ever do, right? So talk to me about ballroom dancing. Educate me on something else I don't know here, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was a kid, right, when I started it. My mom encouraged it. I always loved music, I always loved dancing, and my mom used to do ballroom dancing. She used to play three different instruments as a child growing up, and so it's something that she always wanted us to kind of experience different things, and so I started it and I loved it. I used to do it competitively even, right? So, as waltz, cha-cha, tango, right? All of those, and I used to love doing it. So, I did it growing up in Europe, and then when I moved to United States, I stopped, partially because of the move, partially it's a huge financial commitment, and it's something that was hard for my parents to continue, and so I paused. But in my next life, maybe I'll be a ballroom dancer. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you sound legit. Like I never would have guessed this, right? So do you still enjoy dancing? Is it still a thing for you?
I do. I enjoy it. Sometimes I'll get together with my friends, and we actually just recently, before I moved from Milwaukee, a group of my friends and we did salsa dancing. So yeah, I enjoy it. It's different for me now. But yeah, I enjoy it a lot.
That's interesting. You keep referring back to friends, and I didn't know you had friends, so I learned something new.
Yeah.
Ah, you know what's funny though is there's one thing that you don't want to see Randy Hulsey doing, and that's dancing. It is just a sight. Like it's not even.
Stiff hips.
It's not good, right? Like, and you would say, how are you a musician and you have this rhythm, right? Musicians have to have rhythm. Like, how do you have that rhythm? But there's something about the feet and the hips and all like it doesn't all go together, right? For you can either dance or you can't, I believe, but I'm not that guy, right?
Yeah. It's about rhythm too. Yeah, you say it's still about rhythm, but it's just a little bit different, right? Feeling it in your body versus maybe hearing it, right? I
Of
don't,
course.
but
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Well, is there anything like new and exciting coming up for you as it relates to like travels, projects, work related stuff that you're excited about that you'd like to share with the listeners
Yeah.
who are getting to know Yovana?
I love traveling. I'm hoping to go to Portugal this year, so that's gonna be my next trip. Celebrating my 40th birthday. I love traveling on my birthdays. So if you ever want to send me a gift, don't just book me an airline ticket.
Yeah,
But yeah, so other than that, nothing major. I'm excited. We're going to be actually launching a new website for work, so we've been working on that. We're going to be updating our brand, and we're going to be changing our branding to Lead Catalyst. So a little sneak peek into that is going to be coming soon, but we're excited about that. It's been about 12 months in the works, and we're super excited to rebrand and
awesome. Yeah,
grow
awesome.
and a little bit beyond based on what we do today, especially with, a combination of AI, and we're utilizing a lot of AI tools to support what we do, while still maintaining that, conversation through human connection, right?
Of course. Of course. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm skeptical and excited all at the same time, and skeptical and are not skeptical. Maybe not. Maybe that's not the right word. So maybe I don't know what the right word for it is, but uh, in in short, I'm supposed to be taking my first trip to Europe in November, right? And I've been asked to go out on the road with on the European tour with the Graham Bonnet Band, and Graham was former lead singer of a famous band called Rainbow. Back in the day, some hit songs, and Graham's been around a long time with many different bands, the Michael Schenker Group and Alcatraz. But I said, if I always wanted to see Europe, but I never, I don't know, I just never made the leap, right? And I said, well, this is the time I have to do it. Go with some friends. There's music involved in it. A European tour and whatnot. So we're I think the band is still working those dates out and whatnot. So I'm cautiously looking forward to that. And I say cautiously, like because I mean I've never been to Europe, so I don't know what to expect. And uh, you know, for people that know I have this small palette of foods that I like to eat. I don't have this exquisite like all these different like things that I like to eat. So I'm a little, I guess, a little shallow when it comes to different foods and whatnot. So that probably has me a little on the
Yeah.
the weirded outside. Like, am I going to get over there and like lose 50 pounds because I don't want to eat, right? Or I don't like something. So, there's unknowns. And I think it's like playing a show. Like you don't know if your sound's going to go off in the middle. Like there's just unknowns. And it's this anxiety of not knowing, I think, more than anything, right? Excited, but nervous all at the same time, right?
Yeah. Take advantage of it. Do it. There's burgers everywhere and pasta, so you're gonna be fine. Plus, there's McDonald's everywhere, so you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
But take advantage of it. Europe is gorgeous. Every country is so different and unique. The architecture is beautiful. And it's amazing to think about, it's kind of like hopping from a state to state in US, right? But you're hopping from a country to country with like completely different culture, different architecture, different beauty of the towns and cities, and Europe in general is just like, between the coastlines and mountains and rivers and everything, it's just so beautiful. So you just got to take advantage of it and do it.
That's what I've seen, and the interesting thing I think where some of the fascination came from is that oddly enough, watching Game of Thrones, right? And I'm not a big movie watcher because I just don't have that kind of time to just sit and watch TV. I have so many things going on, but you know, looking into that show and some of the filming locations, some of them were in Croatia, right? Like it's really it's like wow, I would have never thought that it was Croatia because I guess not being a world traveler, you just kind of you have these visions or pictures in your brain of what places might look like based on just what you've heard over time and you've not done any research on it. And I'm like pleasantly surprised that wow, that's in Croatia. Like I would have never thought that, and it's beautiful. Like so, I think that that's where some of the fascination came from. Going to Finland and Norway and some of the places like that. And over time on the show, I've talked to artists that are from Flekkefjord, Norway, and from Budenheim and different places over there, and even in Tilburg, like in the Netherlands, and they're like, Randy, whenever you come over, dude, you can stay at our place, and it's like those kind of friendships are developed from the show, and I'm like, why am I not taking advantage of this? Like you've got people that are inviting you into their home and willing to show you around in Spain and different places. And it's like, you're an idiot for not getting out and taking advantage of this, right?
Yeah. If you don't want to go, I'll go. Just let them know I'll be stopping by.
Yeah,
So,
maybe I need somebody that like speaks the native tongue over there, right? Because
well,
I
which
can barely, yeah, I can barely pronounce the name correctly, let alone have a conversation. So anyway,
Europe is so English fluent that
yeah.
everybody speaks English. So it's so easy to get around. And that's the beauty of Europe is that no matter which language, like everybody speaks English. So,
Well, and I never really thought too much about that until, thinking about taking this trip with Graham and Bethany. Um, like they're like, Randy, do you realize that English is probably the most spoken language on the planet Earth, right? And I'm like, you know what? I guess no, I don't sit around pondering those thoughts every day, like just in the daily life with a podcast and being a professional musician that plays out and a full-time job running a sales organization. Like I don't sit and ponder things like that. I really don't.
you're born into a good language. So consider yourself lucky.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say I was boring there for a little bit, but I would have agreed with you.
Yeah, I would tell
Totally.
you that off the show. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I thought before, like I've taken up almost 2 hours of your time, and I thought before I cut you loose, we could do some quick fire questions. I think they're always fun. The idea is a quick, short answer, and I mean, if there's any of them that you want to elaborate on, you certainly can. There's no parameters, but quick answers are fun, and it's a way to get to know you a little bit better. Sound like fun? Okay. So, favorite color?
Green.
Okay.
Yeah,
Early bird or night owl?
early bird. 4:30 a.m.
Every day?
every day.
So what's the thought around 4:30? Like is this like get up, work out? I guess it's a routine thing for you, right?
It's a routine thing. Part of it, I always joke around. All the successful people wake up before anybody else, right? So I always joke around about that.
Yes. Yes, preach. Say it louder for the people in the back, God damn it, because I say that like there is no successful people that sleep till freaking noon. I'm
No,
sorry. Like
no.
like I'll debate that. If anybody wants to come on here and run their mouth on my show, I'll give you a seat at the table and we'll have a whole 2 hour conversation around that. So anyway, carry on with your thought, please. Thank you.
Yeah, the other part is energy, right? It's peaceful, it's sunrise, so energetically the earth is waking up and it's a great time for a short meditation, centering yourself. So I really enjoy that. And it just became a routine for me. So
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I feel like that I can get up and do things like, I mean, I could knock a half a day of stuff out before some people's alarm clocks even go off. And
yeah,
I think a part of that is for many years I was an insomniac. I haven't set an alarm for myself in over 25 years, right? Even if I had a flight out tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I wouldn't set an alarm because my internal alarm clock never fails me.
yeah.
Um, and I've just never been a layer around in bed. Like I'm up awake. I'm at least awake by 3:30 or 4 every morning. And I think when you work full time and you're trying to produce a show and you're trying to learn songs for to be a professional musician, like when and a lot of people ask, when do you sleep? When do you have time to sleep and do all of those things? And I mean, the short answer is that you don't, and you can't be productive laying in a bed, right?
So do you hang late? Are you okay with like staying up late? I mean, you do a lot of shows. How late?
So my shows is um, being that I'm not in a band anymore. I mean, the band thing, I got that T-shirt back in the '80s, and I don't miss. I mean, I kind of miss playing in a band, but I play in a duo. Chris and I have played together for 5 years, and we're playing like breweries that are family friendly, usually during the day. We play restaurants, you know, that have live music, and we're like the 6 to 9 o'clock musicians, right? We're not in bars till 1 or 2 in the morning. That's not happening anymore,
Yeah.
right? So we're very early. Everything that Chris and I do is very family oriented and pet friendly. A lot of these microbreweries that we play, it's like bring the dogs out, bring the kids. And we play some festivals and private parties and things like that. So there's never a get home at 3 in the morning kind of night. Now, there are some nights that I'll stay up kind of late. I mean, late for me is like 11:30 or so, but you know, I'm not up till the wee hours of the morning. And I think a lot of people mistake, you know, Randy, I got an email from you really late last night. I said, no, you didn't. You got one really early is what you got. Don't mistake the two because I don't stay up till 3 emailing people, right? I might get up and email you at 3, but I don't do that before I go to bed. So
Right.
my whole thing, Jovana, is it's always been there has to be this work family life balance, right? Meaning that, you know, as and when my kids were growing up, I didn't want to be the dad that was never present. And the kids grew up saying, well, my dad was never at my hockey game or never at my baseball game. Like I was very, very involved. And you have to separate, you have to leave work at a reasonable time and then you have family time. So there was always that separation for me. I didn't want to work in the evenings. Now I'll wake up early and get some things caught up or done, but staying up while my kids had, you know, were coming home from school and having dinner, like that wasn't time to work for me, right? So I was always really good at separating those things.
Well, shout out to you as a dad because it definitely shows with Cam. We're super
Uh,
happy to have him. He's freaking great. He's a rock.
that's that means a lot because you know you never know you know, you always hope that your kid is going to shine. And especially when you go stamp your name on him. And it's like, that's why I told you guys early on, you know, put him through the ringer, teach him I believe that he can do that job. And I believe that he's a sponge and he wants to learn and he has more incentive now to learn because of a young family and whatnot. Right. So, you know, just because, you know, you're working with me and we've become friends, like don't give him any special treatment. And even when my daughter was working with Broadleaf for a while and there was no special treatment
Yeah.
there, it's like you're accountable to the business too, right? And There's no free pass or anything like that. You're going to put in your time and you're going to uphold your end and be accountable, or you can just go back to nursing and doing the things that whatever it is that you want to do, right? But you're not going to come and be lazy. Don't be. And I always even telling Cameron, like, hey, what am I going to do? Kind of, I said, Cam, look, if you want to be a garbage man, go be the best garbage man that you can be. Don't be a lazy garbage man. Go put in the work, because I believe that if you put in the work, the work will repay you, right? And make you successful.
It shows, Randy. We just talked about Cam today as a team, and the word that came up was accountability, that he's very accountable to himself, to his team, and how he shows up every day. So, you raised a great kid.
Thank you so much. Well, and I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, I was talking to Jovana and she said, do you have any more kids? And I'm like, and I
Yeah.
said, I took that as a great compliment, because I mean, that meant a lot to me. You really don't know those kind of compliments. And there's always one thing, I think any parent, they always want their kids to be better than them, right? And you want your kids to be respected and admired. And I think that I'm a reflection of my parents. My parents have always been really proud of me. Like when they introduced me to somebody, they're just proud of me because they raised a good kid, right? And I've had just like you, we've done bad things in our lives and things that we weren't proud of, but ultimately we're upstanding people. We do the right things. We're accountable. We're productive. And that's all that you can ask for, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah. You got to make some mistakes. That's how you learn, Randy.
I know. I think I made one time, Jovana, and then maybe I was mistaken, but yeah, maybe. Anyway, what's the one thing you think that people often get wrong about you?
Ooh, I don't know. They underestimate me. Probably that's one thing that people get wrong about me. But it's a positive thing, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What what is a skill you have that many people wouldn't know that you have?
Oh, geez. I don't think I have any special skills or talents.
Really?
Yeah.
It's tough just being beautiful all the time, right? Like, and just no talent. You don't
Yeah.
even have to be talented. You just have to look good, and
Just,
everybody, yeah.
yeah.
I
You're
know
all,
the feel. I know the feeling, actually. So no, I'm
yeah.
kidding. Uh, is there a song that, kind of relating this back to music, right? Is there a song that you've heard in your life that's that song that you wished, if you were a songwriter, you had written?
Hmm. That's a great question. I'm really terrible with like
Names
songs,
of songs and stuff like that. Okay.
yeah, and artists. So I apologize to the music community out there because I'm good with numbers, bad with names.
Sure.
But
Well,
no,
maybe you can sing a little bit of it for the listeners.
you don't want that. You
You don't want to sing and you don't want me to dance, right? So yeah, we know our roles, right? Fair enough. And I thought that, maybe when I put that question in there, I said, maybe because I know a lot of people, much like yourself, that will sit there and sing every song on the radio, but then you say, who sang that song? And you're like,
I
I
don't know.
have no idea. What's the name of the song? I have no idea. Like, I just know the tune, right? So a lot of people don't.
I'll just pull some random artists, some random rappers, mostly when I'm around my dad, just to tease him. But
Right.
otherwise,
All right.
yeah.
Um, any habit that you have that most would never guess you have?
I mean, the 4:30 a.m. is probably the one habit people wouldn't think that I have. But meditation, daily meditation, I try to do that consistently. Grounding is important to me.
Okay.
Um, again, stressful environments, work, right? Running around, doing all that stuff. But daily meditation is key for me.
Yeah, I would have never guessed that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite, like if you had to pick a pastime, is there a favorite pastime of yours?
Pastime. Oh, I thought you meant like past life. I'm like, oh, I don't know what it was in my past life, but it would be fun to
That's
know.
a that's episode 2 that we'll
That's
do, talking about your past life.
talk
But
that when we talk about ayahuasca, then I'll tell you more about past
right.
life. Pastime. No, there's not like a specific time frame. I think for me, I consider myself super lucky to be surrounded by the friends and family that I'm surrounded by. So we always have fun together. You talk about maturity and
Mhm.
how fast I had to grow up, but
Yep.
we're really silly together. We try to really have fun, and I always say, don't take life so serious, right? Have fun in it
Sure.
because life is serious,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just have fun.
100%. And that's that's kind of the interesting thing, that over the time that I've worked with you guys at MPI, you're just like, it's just been real easy. You know what I mean? Like, it's been this little friendship thing that you either connect with people or you don't. And I always say it's like, what I use an acronym PLU, right? People like us, and you gravitate to certain people, and then there's others. Like, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but there's certain customers that I gravitate to, and then
Oh,
there's certain ones that
the dream.
I like and respect, but I would never hang out with you on the
Right.
weekend, right? And those are not the PLUs. Like, the PLUs are like I could see myself hanging out with you or going to a game or having a beer or whatever. Like, that would be, and that's why I ask you on my show, because you're PLU, right? But there are those people that you're just like, I'm just going to keep it professional. You're over there, I'm over here, and you
For
know,
sure.
I don't think anything less of you, but I don't necessarily want to spend my weekends with you either, kind of
Yeah.
thing, right?
Well,
Um,
I think of you as PLU too.
yeah, that's great. I'm glad that you do. Do you have a dream job? Have you ever thought what the dream job for you would be if you could just like,
Wave a
not that
mat.
you want to, not, we don't want Drew to hear this,
Yeah.
right? But if you were to like quit today and you could just have your dream job, do you know what it would be?
Professional traveler. I don't know.
How do you
I
make money doing that? Are you an influencer at this time, right?
Right.
Okay, all right, all right.
I, I wouldn't post anything. I would just be a professional traveler just for sharing experiences.
Okay.
But no, I don't. I don't think I do. Whatever I do, I like to have the ability to problem solve, to change, to evolve, right? So I I don't know. I don't really think about dream jobs. I think maybe what I'm doing is I love it and I enjoy it. And
Sure.
again, working with different people, learning about different industries, problem solving for them, right? So it there's jobs that, kind of like what you were saying, there's your people and there's
Yep.
jobs that you wake up and you're like, all right, it's a job, but even a bad day is a good day, in a sense, because even when that bad day happens, I get energized to like solve it, fix it,
Yeah.
walk away from it in a different perspective. So I enjoy it. Yeah,
Well, I think there's the old saying, and maybe it's not a saying, but if you love what you do, it's not work, right? Or something along those lines. You just enjoy getting up and going and diving into that every day, whether it's sales or podcasting or whatever
right.
the widget is, right? Well, I,
Yeah,
I think I already know the answer to this, but I was going to ask you, coffee or tea.
coffee for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Now, if you ask me beer or wine, what would you guess?
I would say wine, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mountains or beach.
Mountains.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. Never been the beach guy, right? Um, Vinyl or digital? You're way too young to answer that question, but I'll ask it anyway.
Yeah, digital.
Yeah. Introvert or extrovert?
Social introvert.
Okay.
You didn't expect that, did you?
No. No. Well, why, so yeah, I said this was quick fire, but I have to ask you about that. Like, how can you be personable and then say that you're a social introvert, right?
I'm
Do you just
social.
have to be comfortable with the people that you're talking to, or
No, No, I'll spark a conversation with anyone. It just drains me, so I need my alone time. So I need to recharge. So you can put me in front of a group of people, you can put me on stage, I can do a speech, I can do all those things. But it will drain my energy. So some people get energized,
Yeah.
people get drained. I get drained, but I also enjoy doing it, which is weird.
So 2 hours and 9 minutes of conversation with me. Are you drained right now?
No, I'm not. Although it is getting dark in my room, so it's like it's bedtime. I gotta get up at 4:30,
I
right?
know, I know. Well, you're what, an hour? Are you mountain time there?
I'm Pacific time now.
Oh, you're Pacific time. So oh yeah, you got a few hours before
I
you
got a
go to
couple
bed.
hours before bedtime. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you're not that old yet. Okay, so favorite podcast?
Well, obviously. Do I have to say it? Backstage pass.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Favorite podcast host?
oh, well, Randy Halsey.
Yeah, say it louder for the people in the back, please, so they
Randy
can.
Halsey.
uh, you're so awesome. This was as great as I had anticipated, Jovana. I know we've been talking about this for a while, but it's great to have you on and learn more about you and what makes you tick. And I appreciate you sharing your story with the listeners of Backstage Pass Radio. And I appreciate you and your team's efforts in um, helping my company be more successful. So I appreciate that. And I look forward to continued success with you guys. And I wish you good health and success in the near and far future.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. It was a pleasure being on the show with you tonight. Really appreciate you inviting me. I don't know why you did still, but
I remember you asking me that in the early stages. It's like, why are you having me on this show? And I just,
talk about Kendra and then Jovana. Who the heck is Jovana?
yeah. Well, there's going to be people in a lot of countries that know who you are now for sure, right? So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So,
Name to
you know,
you.
yeah, yeah, we'll see. But I also ask the listeners to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on Facebook at Backstage Pass Radio Podcast, on Instagram at Backstage Pass Radio, and on the website at backstagepassradio.com. You guys remember to take care of yourselves and each other, and we will see you right back here on the next episode of Backstage Pass Radio.